Well, here we go again. Google versus Apple, iOS versus Android, camera versus camera. Who's better? Let's find out. If you're looking for tech reviews that give you the information that you actually care about, then hit that subscribe button and be sure to turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a thing. For the past 10 years, it's been Google versus Apple. Who had the better OS? Android was on a ton of phones, but was limited by those phone makers and what they added to the OS. Now Google started building their own phones around their OS, and they learned a lot. Now we've got budget phones going head to head from these guys. So today, I'm gonna focus on the cameras. If you want me to compare these phones as a user, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. So I gotta say, these cameras for sub $400 phones are just insane. Now camera spec wise, they're extremely similar. So most of you probably know it's not always about the numbers, it's how the phone processes the photos and the videos. I'll go ahead and list the full specs down below if you're interested. Like I've said in my last few videos, I like to keep it simple. I like to take a look at shots in the daylight and the sun, portrait and macro, low light, night shots, as well as the video quality for the front and the rear. Now in these first few pictures, it's a mix of straight sun and clouds. The Pixel 4a tended to keep the color more natural. The sky wasn't too blue, and even the darker areas seemed to be balanced really well. Now the SE liked to saturate the colors and liked to lighten up the darker areas. Now as I've said before, and I'll keep saying this, it's all preference, depending on who you ask. Now in this shot of the store sign, the sun wasn't hitting it, it was actually on top, so it was in a bit of a shade. Now the 4a is more natural with the sky and the sign, whereas the SE gave you a little bit of color on both. I actually prefer the SE in this one. Now I also wanted to test the natural macro capabilities of these phones out of the sunlight as well as indirect sunlight. Both of these absolutely killed it. They gave a little bit of bokeh in the background, helping the flowers pop a little bit more. With the direct sunlight, both seem to do a really good job letting the colors pop, and I can see the SE being a little bit more saturated, but honestly, they both look so good. And I also wanted to see how well these perform out of the sun, but still a nice bright area, and to my surprise, it was really tough to tell the difference between these two. Now I did notice that the SE liked to lighten up the darker areas just a bit, and the 4a did keep them a little bit darker, which allowed for more slightly colorful shots of the kids. Again, both of these did a great job, and honestly, if I wasn't looking at them side by side, I probably wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. Now let's take a break from the pictures real quick, and I want to ask you, what's your favorite so far? Go ahead and leave a comment down below. So now let's take a look and a listen at the front-facing video on both of these. Now you'll see them switch back and forth on the audio on top of where it's playing. So I took that nice trip out to Indiana, and I forgot to take video between these two. I should have had Doug on here with me. But testing out the stabilization, the audio, as well as the video quality. Now first things first, I'm noticing right off the bat that we're a little closer on the Pixel. The iPhone is a little further away. I feel like it's darker on the Pixel, but that could just be the way that it's recording. Super nice and colorful on the iPhone. Now, the Pixel almost looks like a little bit of a raw format, almost like a, very colorless, more true to what you're looking at. And the iPhone SE 2020 is very colorful, bright, oversaturated. Got the sun behind us there. See how that's working out. It seems like the Pixel's struggling a little bit. But this is the front-facing camera. I mean, there's going to be limitations to what you get for both of these as far as quality goes and stabilization and all that good stuff. But wanted to give you a quick peek at this and see what you think. After watching these side by side, I did notice the audio on the 4a was a little bit more bright and picking up things around me, but you could still hear me talking. However, I did seem to have a little bit of an issue with the breeze, not really that big of a deal. The SE was a little more focused on me, keeping it a little quieter, and did a good job blacking out the ambient noise. Both stabilized just fine as I was walking around. Oh, and just a quick note, the quality of the 4a as I was shooting, the screen didn't seem all that bright, and I was having trouble seeing, especially when the sun was in my eyes. But of course you can see on the playback, it looked way brighter and it had a more natural look. Now, if you happen to catch my last few videos, I like to mess around with the portrait feature a lot. And both of these have it, so of course, I wanted to show my buddy Doug how much more intense he looked with a sweet bokeh behind him. But the way these phones took the photos was way different. The 4A, surprisingly, was more saturated and darker, whereas the SE was way more bright and looked actually a little more natural. Now, the one cool thing about the 4A is it actually takes 2 photos and lets you choose with or without bokeh. Now, you can do this on the SE by simply sliding the edit bar back and forth, but I think it's pretty cool that they let you do that on the Pixel. Now for the low light shots, which kind of surprised me a little bit looking back on it, because they switched how the way they process the pictures. In this one, the 4A is brightened in the darker areas and more saturated in the sky, whereas the SE was a little bit more natural to my eye. As far as night mode goes, unfortunately the SE doesn't have one in the native app, but the 4A does, and boy does it look good. The SE would probably look better if it wasn't next to the 4A, but hey, maybe next year. So, I don't take many selfies. Surprise, surprise. I don't really focus on it on my videos, but what I do like to focus on is the video portion from the front lens. But my buddy Michael Fire mentioned it, so I ran outside, snapped a selfie, and when I looked at the results, they were way different. So keep in mind, the sun is in behind the clouds right now. It's about 7 p.m., but still plenty of light out. The SE is brighter, more saturated, and actually closer. The 4A is a wider, less saturated, and less bright. Now, I'm sure if the sun was out, this would look way different, but it certainly gave me something to talk about for this section of the video. Now, just to see if it does turn out different, I will go ahead and post some more selfie shots of the 4A on Instagram. Be sure to follow me there if you want to see them. Link will be in the description. As a bonus, I did try to take a couple shots in the plane of the sun setting as we took off. They were kind of ruined by the dirty window, but hey, you can see the 4A kept things a little darker, whereas the SE brightened them up. I think if the window was much cleaner, it probably would look a whole lot better. So now it's time for some video from the rear shooters. Keep in mind as we go through this, you'll see audio changing at the top of the video feed, so go ahead and enjoy. So here is the rear cameras, and I'm still getting that log feeling from the Pixel, but I don't think that's going to look like that on the camera. I'm sure it looks just as beautiful as I'm looking at. Now, again, the iPhone is oversaturated. Not bad oversaturated, just a little more warm. And stabilization seems to be okay on both. It's tough for me to see as I'm walking. They do look okay. And of course, I'll jump back on and talk about the audio and what I feel between the two of them. Very little wind going on here, so I don't know if it's going to pick any of that up. Turning around to me, they're a little bit off here, but I'll seem higher on the iPhone and lower on the Pixel, so we'll try to keep that right. Now, as far as how I look in this, it seems like it was a nice wide-angle shot for both of these. Pretty wide lenses. Single lens, of course, so you can't change back and forth as far as getting a super wide. But I think they both look good for $450. Oh, I'm sorry, $350 on the Pixel and $399 for the iPhone. Both of them are pretty damn good. So I'll take a look at the footage and give you my final thoughts on it. Yep, that video quality looked absolutely awesome. Audio was about the same as before. Stabilization did really good on both of them as they handled me walking back and forth on my uneven yard. Both look great. They definitely didn't disappoint. So, my overall opinion, I think Google and Apple are over-delivering on the quality of these phones. Are they perfect? No, not by a long shot. But keep in mind, the price you're paying for these phones will be more than enough for the budget-conscious people out there. And you can feel better buying your kids one of these phones knowing they will be more than happy with the results and you didn't have to pay $900 plus for it. So which would I choose? Well, taking the OS out of the equation and just looking at the cameras, I gotta say, I really do like the 4A more. I am super impressed with the quality as Google has turned out with this phone. Now, I am going to be doing more tests with the 4A against other budget phones soon. But in the meantime, don't forget to check out my unboxing of the 4A. And of course, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. You guys take it easy and have a great day.